Most people think intelligence is something you should display. They think that if you are sharp enough, observant enough, and ahead of the room, the world will reward that. It does not. Not always. Sometimes the world rewards competence. Often it rewards comfort. And intelligence, when it is too visible, makes other people uncomfortable in ways they rarely admit out loud. The problem is not that people hate intelligence in the abstract. The problem is that they hate what it does to their self-image when it is standing too close. A truly perceptive person changes the atmosphere in the room. They notice what others are avoiding. They hear what was not said. They see the motive behind the performance. They can tell when the smile is a transaction, when the conversation is a test, when the compliment is a leash, and when the kindness is just a socially acceptable form of control. That kind of awareness is dangerous socially because it removes the comfort of illusion. And most people live inside illusions that make them feel bigger than they are. They need those illusions. They need to believe they are smart, morally consistent, emotionally transparent, and harder to read than they actually are. So when someone enters the room and can see through that fog too quickly, the reaction is not gratitude, it is resistance. Sometimes it is subtle. They stop inviting you. They stop speaking freely. They become colder. They call you intense or a lot or too analytical. Other times the reaction is worse. They turn your intelligence into a flaw. You become arrogant, difficult, condescending, detached, not a team player, or somehow threatening for the crime of being able to see clearly. This is one of the oldest social injuries, the punishment of the person who notices too much. And because of that, wise people often learn something brutal early in life. They learn that raw intelligence is not always power. Sometimes it is exposure. It is the open display of a blade in a room full of people who came looking for reassurance, not truth. So they start softening the edges. They slow down their speech. They let certain questions die in the air. They give the room enough oxygen to keep breathing. They learn that appearing slightly less intelligent than they are can preserve the relationship, preserve the opportunity, and preserve the peace. That is not cowardice. It is social intelligence. It is the refusal to confuse honesty with unnecessary destruction. There are moments when telling the full truth is noble. There are also moments when the full truth simply feeds someone's insecurity and accomplishes nothing. Human beings are not machines. They do not evaluate information cleanly. They evaluate it through pride, fear, hierarchy, and self-protection. If your intelligence bruises those systems too directly, they will defend themselves before they will understand you. And this is where the mask becomes useful, not because the truth is weak, but because truth without timing is often useless. A person who is too eager to prove how much they know is not usually secure. They are usually wounded. They are trying to force recognition from a world that has withheld it. They want the room to bow. They want the authority figure to notice. They want the beautiful person, the powerful person, the successful person, the group itself to finally say, yes, you are exceptional. But the desperate need to be seen is exactly what makes a person easy to manipulate. The more visibly intelligent you appear, the more social pressure you create, and the more that pressure returns to you as isolation. People begin to manage you instead of meeting you. They ask you things they do not want answered. They flatter you while resenting you. They use your insight while doubting your intentions. They seek your advice, then ignore it if it threatens their preferred version of reality. In workplaces, this becomes especially obvious. The person who knows the most is not always promoted. The person who makes the boss feel secure often is. In families, the brightest child is not always the most loved. Sometimes they are the one everyone silently resents because they became the mirror the family did not ask for. In relationships, intelligence can become a threat if it exposes emotional games too quickly. You see the pattern, you name the pattern, and suddenly you are not interesting anymore. You are inconvenient. So pretending to be less intelligent than you are is not about lying to the point of self-betrayal. It is about refusing to become socially expensive. It is about understanding that visibility has a cost. There is a difference between being honest and being unnecessarily legible. Sometimes the smartest move is to speak a little less, reveal a little slower, and let people feel more intelligent than they are around you, not because they deserve the illusion, but because the illusion keeps them open, and when people are open, you can actually influence them. When they feel threatened, they close. That is the game. Most people do not want to be outdone. They want to feel safe enough to remain in your presence. If you make them feel inferior too quickly, they will not admire you. They will protect themselves from you. But there is a darker layer underneath all of this. Pretending to be less intelligent can also be a test of your own maturity, because the ego loves loves to perform intelligence. It loves the thrill of being the one who sees more, predicts more, understands more, and wins the argument before the argument even begins. That kind of superiority feels clean in the mind and poisonous in the room. It gives you a rush. It makes you feel above. And feeling above is one of the oldest addictions in the human psyche. But the price of that addiction is social distance. You become the person people orbit carefully. They do not relax around you. They do not confess easily. They do not let you into the ugly parts of themselves because they already suspect you are judging them. So the mask of humility serves two purposes at once. It protects you from envy and it protects you from your own inflation. It reminds you that intelligence is not the same thing as wisdom. A wise person knows when to speak plainly and when to let a room keep its illusions. A wise person knows that the goal is not to crush every false belief in front of them, but to move through the world without being crushed by the social consequences of saying everything that is true. There are people who are intellectually brilliant and spiritually infantile. They use insight as a weapon because they have no better way to feel strong. They confuse being right with being free. They think that if they can expose everyone else, then they themselves are safe. But exposure is not freedom. It is only one form of power, and often a fragile one. Real freedom is being able to see clearly without needing to announce it. It is being able to understand the room while still allowing the room to function. It is having enough self-respect to know you are not diminished by silence. This is why pretending to be less intelligent can be a form of discipline. It keeps you from overplaying your hand. It keeps you from turning every interaction into a referendum on your worth. It keeps you from confusing a conversation with a battlefield. And perhaps most importantly, it keeps you from making your gifts harder to receive. Because people are much more willing to absorb intelligence when they are not being humiliated by it. They will listen longer. They will reveal more. They will trust more. They will let you closer. The paradox is that by showing slightly less of your brilliance, you often gain access to deeper influence than if you had displayed all of it at once. The wise do not always shine. Sometimes they dim themselves just enough for others to stop squinting. And that is why the title is not really about becoming small, it is about becoming strategic. The goal is not to hide forever. The goal is to understand that intelligence without restraint becomes social violence. You do not need to announce every insight. You do not need to win every room. You do not need to let every person know exactly how fast your mind is moving. Some people can only tolerate your intelligence in small doses. Some people can only respect it after they have felt that they are still included. Some people are only reachable if they are not made to feel like fools in the process of being helped. This is true in leadership, dating, family, friendship, and any place where human beings are trying to remain psychologically intact while interacting with one another. So yes, pretend to be less intelligent than you are when the situation calls for it. Not because truth is shameful, but because social reality is fragile. Not because you are weak, but because people are. Not because you have nothing to offer, but because what you offer lands better when it is delivered without arrogance. There is a brutal elegance in this. You become less readable and more effective, less performative and more powerful, less hungry for recognition and more able to receive it when it actually matters. And in the end, that is the deeper point. Intelligence is not proven by how loudly it speaks. It is proven by whether it knows when silence is the more intelligent move.